at Donald Trump's best and at Joe Biden's worst.
Yeah.
Joe Biden still easily beats Donald Trump in the only states
it's the contrast.
The only states that matter in electing the next president. It's also geography. This guy's from Scranton, Pennsylvania, and I'm not doing his bidding. I'm just telling you the truth. He's from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He spent his entire life connecting with the industrial Midwest. That's why Joe Biden is doing so much better in those swing states than anybody else.
Well, President Trump has taken his sides to the West Coast as he is fundraising in California before he puts on 3 rallies over the next 3 days. Today in Phoenix, tomorrow in Colorado Springs, and Friday in Las Vegas. As he did in Iowa and New Hampshire, Trump will do his best to counter-program the Democrats who will be debating in Las Vegas tonight ahead of the Nevada caucuses on Saturday. Let's bring in NBC News political reporter Monica Alba. She's in Phoenix, where the president will hold an event today. Monica, what do we expect from the president today?
Hey there, Mika. That's right. This kicks off a long string of these counter-programming rallies in critical states for the president. But really, the major point of this, is one aide telling me, is sort of the art of the troll. This is a re-election campaign that has a lot of money in the bank, and they are sort of more focused on the general election 9 months out as they watch the Democrats battle it out to see who their eventual nominee will be. So tonight, as those Democrats are taking the stage at our own NBC News debate, the president will be here in Phoenix rallying with vulnerable Senator Martha McSally, who, of course, stood by him in the impeachment trial and is sort of being rewarded by that by the White House. And we'll see that also tomorrow with Senator Cory Gardner. But the big finish is this rally in Las Vegas on Friday, just hours before the Democratic caucuses there. And it's worth noting that in Iowa and New Hampshire, while there were GOP contests and the president was touting record turnout as compared to prior incumbent presidents, there is no GOP contest in Nevada. They canceled it, in fact, the state party did, to consolidate delegates and support for the president leading into the convention. So this is really just mostly a flexing of organizational muscle and might ahead of it. And they're happy to steal headlines from the Democrats. And the president is actually staying in Las Vegas this whole week. He's going to be at his own hotel. So it's not really just logistical headaches for the Democrats. They've got some counter-programming issues on their hands too, Mika.
Hey, Monica, it's Willie. The president was tweeting yesterday about Bernie Sanders, about Democrats stealing the nomination from Bernie Sanders again, as the president said it. Mayor Bloomberg tweeted back, said, "Why are you so scared of me? Why do you want to run against Bernie Sanders?" The president tweeted back, "No, I want to run against you." What's your real sense, talking to people around the president and in the White House, of how he's viewing Michael Bloomberg's candidacy? Is it something he's taking very seriously? Is he threatened by Mayor Bloomberg as a potential opponent?
It's fascinating because they've obviously spent the last year preparing for who they thought the Democratic nominee was going to be, and Michael Bloomberg was never on those lists. So when this all started to happen, they really raised their eyebrows and paid a lot of attention, but they did sort of dismiss it at the outset. They didn't think this was going to be as much of a potential threat as we're seeing it now, given the current polling. So when you see the way that they've sort of attacked Senator Sanders, they have all of these preparations on Vice President Joe Biden. Even if you think back to Senator Elizabeth Warren and the attacks of last year, we haven't seen anything like that from the campaign quite yet on Bloomberg. I think that all changes tonight when we do see him on the debate stage, and the campaign will sort of start to attack him more based on what they see policy-wise. But they've been reserving, they've been sort of letting the president take the lead on that, because as you see, he sort of relishes that fight mostly on Twitter, Willie.
All right, NBC's Monica Alba, thank you very much. And Joe, just before we go, Trump versus Bloomberg. I feel Trump's feeling the heat a bit.
Oh, he is. I mean, he is. They haven't figured this out yet. And they understand completely that Michael Bloomberg, whatever they raise, Michael Bloomberg, that's a rounding error to him, and he can write a check. So what they were thinking was going to be one of their biggest advantages, fundraising, suddenly is going to be not only neutralized, but be canceled out, but probably be doubled by Michael Bloomberg. Also, another thing they're starting to recognize is that this guy knows how to dominate media cycles, just like Donald Trump. That Mike Bloomberg has gone to school in what Donald Trump did 4 years ago, and there even is a grudging respect in the Trump camp that this guy knows how to seize sees
Yeah.
the media cycle. And Willie, one thing that they pointed out last week was the leak about Hillary Clinton. A preposterous leak. He will never select Hillary Clinton as his vice president. Whoever wins this, if it is a white man or a white woman, they will get a person of color, whether it's a black or a Hispanic or somebody that will demographically round out and inspire voters to get out and vote. But it was such a preposterous leak. It was meant to troll the media. It was meant to troll everybody.
What does that sound like?
Yeah, right. And guess what? They owned for about a day media cycle. So if you got a bad story about Michael Bloomberg, then their campaign just throws out a leak that the press can't avoid. And yes, who does that sound like?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all these questions about stop and frisk and redlining and everything else he's been facing have come out. The campaign has one by one rolled out more African-American support from the Congressional Black Caucus, from mayors across the country. So they are trying to push back against this. But again, they've been able to control this conversation. And that changes tonight on that stage when our moderators at NBC, but also Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden get to put their sights and demand answers from Mike Bloomberg in a way he hasn't had to answer questions in a very long time.
All right, more to come. Still ahead on Morning Joe. More new polling just crossed from the Washington Post, cementing the trend we have been discussing here. Bernie Sanders surging to the lead nationwide. Plus, we'll read from the must-read opinion pages and get into that slew of presidential pardons and commutations with NBC's Ken Dilanian's latest reporting. You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.